In last week's video, we covered wallets. In this week's video, I've got 5 great watches for your everyday carry, all under $50. Starting off with the watch that led me down this rabbit hole, we've got the Casio AE1200WH, also known as the Casio Royale or World Time Watch. I've had this one for quite some time. It is absolutely a favorite of mine. I think I paid $25 or $30 for it, but it's usually floating in that $20 to $30 price range. This is truly an excellent watch and value proposition though. The case size measures 42 millimeters by 45 millimeters, so it wears a little bit bigger than a lot of the others that we are trying out in this list here, but still a pretty reasonable size in today's modern preference of a little bit smaller watches. I have the all black resin option here, but they do have a few other variants, one with sort of a copper exterior on the case, one that is a full like silver, steel, or metal. I think this is such a stunning and unique watch that I've actually had people say that they subscribe to my channel just because they saw me wearing this. There's definitely a bit of a cult following. It came out in 2012, but it seems to really be growing in popularity in recent years. I think it is such a cool looking watch. You have a full world map on it, hence the World Time Watch moniker. You have 31 different time zones to choose from for your watches. You can also have up to 4 different times displayed. You also have all of the great like normal digital watch standard things. It also has 100 meters of water resistance, so you don't need to baby it if you're out in the rain. I've taken this on a ton of camping and backpacking trips. Solid amber backlight here, as well as a 10-year battery, which a lot of these are going to be like 2 to 3 year batteries. So extended battery life, great backlight, all the digital watch features, really cool and great unique design. You can't go wrong for 20 bucks on this one. Next on the list is a newer pickup of mine, definitely that throwback retro sort of style. This is the Casio AQ800E. This is sort of a reissue or tribute of the 1980s AQ450 from Casio. It came out earlier this year, I believe. I have the one with the white grid watch face. They also have one that has a black variant as well as a full gold instead of the silver. Both the case and band are a chrome plated resin, so you're not getting a full metal build out here, but this one's only $40, and it's definitely an aesthetics over like a long-term quality sort of thing when you're in this price range. There just isn't much way around that, unfortunately. So I would be a little more careful with this so you don't scratch off that chrome plating, but it is just such a cool look. I love this anti-digi design where you have the little digital display on the bottom, which still gives you a lot of the digital watch features that I actually use pretty frequently in my day-to-day life. I'm not a smartwatch person. I love the analog watch face on this as well. That grid pattern in the background just looks so great. This is totally the watch if you're picturing like an 80s businessman. That's totally the vibe it gives off, and I can't get enough of it. The case measures 40.7 millimeters by 32.1 millimeters. It wears pretty small, but that extra length I think adds to the size of it. I have about 7-inch wrists, maybe 6 3/4. I think this size fits me pretty well, whereas some really small watches I think just look too small on me, but I do tend to favor larger watch faces like the G-Shock Mudmaster that's like 52 or 54 millimeters or something. I love those big watches even though they're not the full trend right now. Couple of cons with this one though, as much as I love it, you have no backlight, so in the dark you're essentially useless for a watch like this. I love having that solid backlight. This one doesn't have it. The other gripe I have with this, these cheap metal bands are some real arm hair pullers. If you have hairy arms like I do, be prepared for a little bit of arm hair pulling. I tend to notice if you wear these pretty tight and snug on your wrist, it really minimizes a lot of that arm hair pulling, but that's the main reason I tend to prefer cloth or resin bands over the metal bands, even higher end ones. I just think they end up pulling my arm hair a little bit less, so keep that in mind if you're on the fence. But otherwise, this is such a cool and unique design. I love this sort of 80s business look. It's only $40 too, and just such a good statement piece without spending a ton of money. Moving into field watches, we have the Timex Expedition Scout. This is a 40 millimeter field watch. I've had my eye on this for a couple of years now. I actually wore the Timex Weekender for several years. It ended up breaking after probably like 5-6 years, and I've wanted to replace it ever since. This is essentially like an upgraded Weekender in my opinion, at least for my style tastes. I love that field watch look. But whether it's the Weekender or the Expedition, definitely both Timex classics. I love the size of this at 40 millimeters. It wears a lot smaller than you'd expect when you hear 40. You have a brass case with a titanium finish. This one has a nylon cloth strap. I love having cloth straps. Like I said, resin or cloth are definitely my two go-tos over leather and metal. But this watch at $40 has a really great feel. You know, they have some higher end Expedition watches that can go for a few $100s. I feel like you get a lot of that quality for a significant amount less money with this. The color I chose is this gray watch face and case with the green nylon strap, but they have a ton of different color variants. Even on Amazon, there's like 12 to choose from. On top of all that stuff though, you have 50 meters of water resistance. You have a nice little date complication, which is always really handy just to have some access to the date. I'm used to the digital watches with all those features, so I like having that as an addition for an analog watch. Timex has their Indiglow as well, so no worries with this one in the dark. The Indiglow looks awesome. It's such a cool and retro throwback type of feature. Looks great. My one complaint with this one though is actually in the strap. And this is like a personal preference thing. For my wrists, like I said, at 6 3/4, 7 inches, this strap is pretty long to the point where it sticks up past my wrist a bit. So it's a little unsightly for my wrist size. If you have bigger wrists, that's a huge plus for you. I know some people really struggle with that, but it might be worth looking into some alternative options if you have really small wrists. Mine just sticks out a little. But if you have a 6 or 6.5 inch wrist, that strap might just be too big for you to wear this. But overall, really great watch, classic field watch design, under $50, solid build and feel to it. You really can't go wrong with Timex as well as Casio for these digitals. Moving back into full digital, we've got the Casio A168-1. Recently I talked about the F91W in the best Amazon EDC under 100. This is sort of the successor to the F91W, a little bit of a different design and style with the metal and a few extra features that the F91W doesn't have. First and foremost though, I absolutely love the look of this watch face. You have these really nice color accents with the red and blue. It says electroluminescence on it, and a big reason for that, you have a really great backlight on this. The F91W has a backlight, but it is pretty weak and doesn't cover an even spread. This is like a full even blue backlight. It looks amazing. The watch case and band, again, like the AQ800E, are going to be a chrome plated resin, so you kind of run into some of those durability issues long term, so you're probably going to want to baby it just a bit to make sure it looks nice. But you have this really great sort of jewel cut shape out of the watch case. You get a lot of nice shine off of it. It is definitely a standout in terms of digital watches. You have all the standard digital watch features, calendar, stopwatch, timer. It does say it's water resistant as well, but again, unspecified. So probably good for some light splashing in the rain, but not much else. And similar to the AQ800E, again, with this metal, you're going to run into some arm hair pulling. So if that's a big concern or a deal breaker for you, I would go to the F91W. It's a very similar look, but in a resin case. But I love the extra features of this with that backlight, especially. This one comes in at $20 compared to the F91 is usually around $15. Both excellent options, both classics. This one's just kind of meant to be that sort of improved upon successor of the F91W. Moving on from there, we have the Casio CA53, also known as the calculator watch. Now, this watch was worn by Walter White in Breaking Bad. I actually found that out recently from a comment from one of you, so thanks for that. Also worn by Marty McFly in Back to the Future. Just such a great kind of retro throwback sort of look here with all of the great digital watch features, but you have a little built-in calculator, mostly for looks, to be honest. We all have our phones and these buttons are pretty small, but it does technically work if you needed to. I have the black resin version, but you have a lot of different colors here. There's a really great cream option that I debated getting. You have a nice hunter green, a blue, ton of different choices, so check those out. Comes in at $19. The case size measures 34.4 by 43.2. I think it's a pretty good size on the wrist, and I think for this size too, it is a remarkably thin watch, so it wears really light. It's kind of one of those watches that you put on and forget that you have it because it's so light and so thin. The one downside to the CA53W, just like the AQ800E, is you have no backlight. So definitely not a nighttime watch if that's a deal breaker for you, but just such a cool look, such a retro look. Definitely a conversation starter if you want something kind of cool and unique. They have the Casio data bank as well. I think that one's a little bit more expensive. I like the look of this a lot more. It's definitely more of an iconic design in my opinion. I've got a couple of honorable mentions I want to talk about, but first I want to thank Vetted for sponsoring this week's video. If you're not already familiar, Vetted is a free browser extension that compares products as well as their reviews and prices to make sure that you're getting the best value for money and you're not wasting any more time or money that you need to when deciding on a purchase. I've had it installed in my computer for a few months now, and it's been even more useful than I had originally anticipated. Giving a good example here, shopping for a blender. This is not a category I'm very familiar or experienced with, so if you search, it shows that the best overall option is the Vitamix A2500. On top of the picks that you see on the top of the page, you can see a few other options as well as an aggregate of reviews from really reputable sources like RTings, Tech Gear Lab, Tom's Guide, Good Housekeeping. It also has a built-in Amazon price tracker, which might be my favorite feature. You can see it's currently at $458, which is a lower price than it's currently being sold at Best Buy, and also a low price for Amazon compared to the usual $500 or $550 if you look at a couple of months ago. It's been really convenient. It works directly through Amazon and Google, so you don't need to pull up a bunch of different tabs for price trackers, reviews, all of this other stuff. It aggregates all of that all into one just to make everything as simple and as easy as possible. So check it out, save yourself some time and money before the next time you need to go shopping for something. I've got a link in the description below. It's completely free to try, so no risk in checking it out. Huge thanks again to Vetted for sponsoring this week's video and for making such a solid browser extension. So getting back into the watches, I've got a couple of honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut of the top 5 here. First one being the G-Shock DW5600. I'm a huge fan of the G-Shocks. It didn't quite make the cut for a few different reasons. First one being I actually have the 5610, which is the multi-band solar version of the DW5600. It's a little bit more money and you get that solar charging as well as the multi-band, but the main thing is the solar. I think it's worth the little bit of extra money to get that and just not need to worry about charging your battery ever again. But also the retail price on the DW5600 is $75, so a little bit over our $50 range, but you can usually find it around a $40 to $50 price point. So if you don't have a G-Shock Square yet, that is a great starting point if you don't want to put in the extra money for the solar. Another option I want to mention that's perfect for this list, but because I put the A168, felt a little bit redundant, but the Casio F91W. Talked about this one on the channel before as well, but this is a really solid watch and extremely similar to the A168. I really like that this one has a resin band. I would always choose a resin at this price point over metal. That's my personal preference. I know it's not everyone's, but what you get with the backlight on this one, I think is such a huge improvement for the extra $3 or $4 in cost. Both are really solid options, but I think the A168 wins out by just a hair in both the aesthetics and the backlight. But that wraps it up for this week's video. Like I said, I've really gone down the rabbit hole for some of these like kind of retro budget watches. I've been having so much fun diving into all of this and kind of building up a little bit of a collection. So much fun. Be sure to ask any questions that you might have about any of these down in the comments below. Let me know if you want to see more content focused around watches. I've been pretty obsessed lately, so I'd be happy to brainstorm some new topics and ideas. Thank you all so much for watching though, and I'll talk to you in the next one.